Breaking the wall of common sense. This is Censor Studio. The United States is currently discussing potentially withdrawing or reducing its troops in Korea. Recently, there has even been a report claiming that only about 1/3 of United States troops should remain in Korea and the rest should be withdrawn, which has sparked major controversy. However, the report's recommendation to withdraw not just United States troops from Korea, but also forces in Japan and the Military Advisory Group in Taiwan raises significant concerns. Let's examine this issue today. Dan Caldwell, ex-senior advisor to the United States Secretary of Defense, issued a report on July 9th United States time on modifying the United States troop withdrawal to align with American interests. This report was co-authored with Jennifer Kavanaugh, a senior fellow at the United States think tank Defense Priorities. The report contains several shocking points. It suggests that the United States should redeploy some troops from Asia to more strategic defensive positions. For example, it mentioned withdrawing or partially withdrawing United States troops stationed in Korea or military advisory groups in Taiwan. It argued for transferring significant responsibility to allies and friends, and pulling back the main axis of the United States military's regional posture from the first to the second island chain. First, let's look at the island chains and see how far they're pulling back. The first island chain spans Okinawa, Taiwan, and the Philippines, while the second reaches Guam, Saipan, and Papua New Guinea. These island chains are a kind of imaginary line that China established in the 1980s. They were created as steps for China to gradually advance into the Pacific. Ultimately, these lines show China's intention to divide the Pacific in half. However, there have been voices in the United States suggesting that they should withdraw all the way back to the second island chain. If you look at the contents of this report, the United States Forces Korea currently has 28,500 troops stationed. However, they are arguing that all but about 10,000 troops, 2 combat flight squadrons, and support units should be withdrawn. The remaining troops would handle support, maintenance, and logistics instead of combat operations. It asserts that in the event of war on the Korean peninsula, the Korean military should lead combat operations instead of the United States military. Simultaneously, they deduce that South Korea's superior conventional forces enable this. So why are they decreasing the United States troop presence in Korea? The primary goal of United States troops in Korea is to deter North Korea and defend South Korea, rather than to contain China. So in reality, if China were to carry out an extreme action like invading Taiwan, United States troops stationed in Korea would need to be deployed quickly. The problem is that United States troops in Korea can't be withdrawn immediately without South Korea's consent. South Korea needs to give a certain level of approval for the United States troops to be pulled out and quickly deployed to Taiwan. But in this case, since the situation would be urgent, it seems they judge that they might miss the golden time. The United States claims they will deploy troops from Korea to Guam so they can be quickly sent to defend Taiwan in an emergency. Even more shocking, they argued for further reduction in United States troop size in Korea and withdrawal of most ground forces. The United States troops in Korea are crucial for South Korea's security, so their withdrawal would naturally cause extreme concern for South Korea. There's a real possibility that our security could be at risk, and since we also receive a lot of economic benefits from having the United States troops in Korea, that's likely to become difficult as well. If the withdrawal actually goes ahead as stated in this report, it could become the starting point for South Korea's security to be put at risk. There are a lot of shocking points in this report. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, it argues that we should retreat to the second island chain. The report argues for withdrawing United States forces not only from Korea, but also the United States Military Advisory Group in Taiwan and some United States forces in Japan. Let's look at the United States forces in Japan first. About 75% of United States military bases in Japan are stationed in Okinawa. However, they argue that some of these troops should be swiftly relocated to Guam or the United States mainland, recommending the immediate transfer of 5,000 United States Marines to Guam and 4,000 troops to the United States mainland. By 2027, it seems like 2027 has a significant meaning, but anyway, they argued that only about half the current troops, around 14,000, should remain in Okinawa. The reason is that if China invades Taiwan, they may attack United States military bases in Okinawa. Effective attacks could lead to high United States casualties, which is why this is being discussed. They argued that most of the troops should be moved to areas far from the Chinese coast to protect personnel and assets, and then respond to China's attacks. It was stated that as troops withdraw from Japan, the country should correspondingly strengthen its own defense capabilities. Shockingly, it suggests withdrawing the approximately 500 American military advisors in Taiwan. Stationing United States troops in Taiwan was called a provocative measure that violates the United States' promise not to do so. It was urged that they be withdrawn promptly. It also stated that keeping these 500 American military advisors in Taiwan doesn't really increase Taiwan's military capabilities, and if the goal is to truly strengthen the Taiwanese military, that can be done in the United States mainland. There have been very shocking statements. It's possible for someone to say things like this. Some might say that it's only mentioned in the report and hasn't actually happened yet, but I think a little differently. We need to pay close attention to the person who wrote this. Former advisor Caldwell wrote this report. but former advisor Caldwell is deeply involved in defense policy. The United States Department of Defense reviews the global posture of United States forces and establishes defense strategies, but former advisor Caldwell was very close to Secretary of Defense Hexes. Experts predict the resources in this report will likely be reflected in policy. Considering the United States' recent actions, it appears they are behaving in that manner. On July 8th, United States President Taiwan stated that Korea is a wealthy nation. He insisted that Korea should fund its own defense and contribute more for United States troops stationed there. During a White House cabinet meeting, President Taiwan reiterated his call for Korea to boost its defense spending. He claimed that Korea should pay $10 billion every year, which is about 13.74 trillion won. He also mentioned that there are currently 45,000 United States troops stationed in Korea. There are currently around 28,500 troops stationed. The 45,000 figure likely included both combat troops in Korea and around 16,000 civilian employees. President Trump is overestimating the United States troop presence in Korea, while suggesting further reductions are acceptable. The Wall Street Journal previously reported that the United States was considering reducing and relocating 4,500 troops in Korea. If the United States reduces its troops in Korea, it's highly likely these 4,500 soldiers will be withdrawn. It seems that these 4,500 troops would be relocated to Guam or other bases in the Indo-Pacific region, so that if China invades Taiwan, they can be deployed to Taiwan immediately. The key point to note here is this: adjusting the number or location of United States troops in Korea is not just a numbers game. It could significantly impact South Korea's national security, the United States, Korea alliance, and the balance of power throughout Northeast Asia. Although 4,500 appears to be just 16% of all United States troops in Korea, this gap in military strength could be more significant when considering key assets like high-level reconnaissance resources, missile defense system operators, and rapid strike units. As explained, the United States troops in Japan and the military advisory group in Taiwan would need to be mobilized, highlighting the severity of the situation. There are even talks that the United States might be trying to give up on East Asia. China might go out of control and invade Taiwan if the United States is absent, as there would be no way to stop them in that scenario. If this occurs, South Korea and Japan will feel directly threatened, potentially leading to extreme decisions. So if these discussions about a United States troop withdrawal actually continue, what choice should South Korea make? If the United States withdraws its troops from South Korea, and possibly Japan, realistically speaking, South Korea will have no choice but to strengthen its own independent defense capabilities. If we don't do this, South Korea's security will truly be at risk. We have to deal with North Korea or China right away, but our current defense capabilities are not enough. The introduction of strategic weapons could expand further, with some potentially discussing developing nuclear weapons domestically. It may be crucial to bolster multilateral security cooperation with neighboring countries and allies such as Japan and Australia. Some also speculate that the United States' actions could be meant to facilitate negotiations. Some say that President Trump is making these remarks in order to apply his negotiation style directly to the diplomatic stage. President Trump often uses a strategy in negotiations where he first presents the highest level of demands to pressure the other party and then draws them toward the actual level of demands he wants. It's a method that creates a psychological state where the other party takes the threat seriously and feels compelled to make concessions. He often used this strategy in past trade and tariff negotiations. This could be part of ongoing negotiations, but Korea seems to have difficulty overcoming its anxiety. The current situation goes beyond United States troop reduction in Korea. It's a test of the fundamental nature of the South Korea-United States alliance. We need to recognize the reality that there is no such thing as an unconditional alliance, and it's time for us to seriously consider what responsibilities and roles we must take on. Honestly, I thought it was just about the United States troops in Korea, but when I looked at the report, it also mentioned reducing United States troops in Japan and even withdrawing the military advisory group from Taiwan, so there were a lot of shocking details. The main concern is that the author is a close aide to the United States Secretary of Defense Hexes, meaning this could potentially become official defense policy. This is practically the same as giving up on East Asia. In this situation, what choice should we make? Please let us know your thoughts in the comments. That's the end of the video. Thank you.